5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 11.
All right, welcome back. This is WUB, Wake Up Belize, Morning Vibes. Our telephone numbers here, 202-4469, 202-4409, and 222-4299. And you're welcome to call in. As I said, in a short time, we will make connection with attorney at law, Miss Williams, who is an immigration attorney. I think you remember about 6 or 7 months ago we spoke to her. Very informative conversation. Well, by popular demand, we will be having conversation with her about zero tolerance, about the DACA program, and certainly about this new issue that's come up in the last couple of weeks, that permanent residents in the United States as well as citizens are also in jeopardy of losing their status, and we will find out what are those conditions that will cause that. But in the event that you would like to make any calls, you're free to do that. Let's go with the first call. Welcome, caller.
Greetings.
Greetings.
Brother Noor.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to listen to, well, first of all, I'm a coach of FC Elite. And with the owner, Mr. Benito Suarez, no? I'm going to listen to the sports show, and they had on Dean Samuels. One of the problems what we have in Belize, the officials of the game, they are too personal. They take everything personal. They seem to forget that the game is an emotional game. Now, as an old player from Landiva, I come from the discipline of Mr. Hoy. That's where I speak from. I am in no way condoning the conduct of our team. I'm nowhere condoning it. I'll be the first to express my disappointment because we played. There's a couple of facts I want to take into consideration. FC Elite is on the scene about 3 to 4 years. We have played various tournaments. In one game, we had get more card, red and yellow, in all the tournaments we have played within 3 to 4 years. Okay? When they find out that the captain, or the co-captain, Alaman, get a red card, nobody couldn't believe it. One of the most cool and smooth player. Why did he claim he get the red card? Because he asked the referee one simple question. And he was threatened with giving him a red card, and he said, well, give it to me. And that's why he get the red card. Now, we have played all these tournaments without, in our first championship game, when Orange Walk came to Belize, the kind of calls that we received, it prompted me. I told the owner, I said, listen, do you see how these guys call it, referee the game? Can you write a letter to FFB and request that we would not like a referee body from the north? No problem I think society have, right, is that you mash my foot, I do something to you. Trust it. They only look at what I did. They do not look at what has been happening before I do what I did. And that's the problem. We have wrote to the committee and requested within our rights. You have Nat, you have Belmopan, you have Kayo, you have all our districts that we could have get referees from. Why do we have to wait until it gets out of hand and we complain about this? We have written to you and asked you, can you please do not give us referee from the north? Granted, they want to separate Orange Rock from Corozal, and granted so. We could go into other different things. We could look into ethnicity. And that's going to be another problem too. We're not going there. We have FC Elite, we have played, I think it was 4 or 5 games, or 6 games. We had never get a referee from Belize City. Never. We went to Belmopan, we get a referee from Belmopan or Cayo. And I'm saying that these are things that you look into before. And if you look on the clip, because I told the boss that we need to sit down and send the clips, because we tape all of our games. There's a clip that they show over where Naeem run behind a player. One of the problem, even international, Murray, the thing that I despise about the game, they take it and make a joke. A player falls down, and the referee big things. They don't see the player. You look on the clip where Naeem supposedly hit the guy in the back. I'm not saying he didn't, but I'm saying the way he passed and brushed him. There's no cause for the act that the guy went through for him to get a card. Fine, he get the card. But I have made several trips to the commissaire and asked him who is in charge of the game and the side. Can we just speak to the referee? And I thought that was well within my rights. The game was getting out of hand. We know the type of atmosphere that we have.
Yeah.
Right. We have worked hard. We have worked hard. FC Elite has worked hard. The owner puts in everything. And then to get the game just snatched away from us. I told the commissaire, if you remember the game with the guy George in the basketball scene where the head coach, a black guy, I don't remember his name, came out and just ripped, start cursing, and he said, I'm going to get fined. But with the expression, with the adjective, he can accept it, but you have to stand up for his players.
Yeah.
What are we supposed to do after we work so hard and watching it taken away from us? I also told my players, it is a lesson for us. We need to keep cool under fire. I am not dispelling what they did.
All right.
I am saying that we should have been like Michelle Obama said. They go low, we go high.
All right.
And that is what I fault us for. Okay, they take us out of our game and show us, and we get to the point where we was. But to say that the cause of the referee did not have nothing to do with the game, it's ridiculous. The same Naeem was kicked down. He ran after the player. I didn't like that. I thought that was unsportsmanship. In the next play, somebody went up to buck a ball and the opposing player falls down. Look on the clip. He get a card for that. And these are the things that I'm saying is killing us in Belize with football.
All right, brother.
Yeah. Before we jump into conclusion and say, look at the player's action. If you remember the World Cup when Neymar, when the guy fouled Neymar, he did foul him in the box, but it did not warrant a penalty. What they did, they looked at the clip and they reversed the penalty.
Right.
And that's all I'm saying that we need to do. Forget the action that created, because what created the action or the reaction was the action.
Got you, my brother.
To every action, there's a reaction. We suffer that in Belize at our home ground with guys that ref from there not. Why is it that we couldn't be unheard to? What was so hard for them to give us a different referee from a different pool? And if we act like that, then sanction us.
All right, brother.
Because
I think
we have got what we had asked for.
I think we understand the issue that you're dealing with, and yes, the referees constantly are coming under a lot of scrutiny because of the calls that they make. And yes, it is an emotional game, but there are certain rules that have to be followed. I appreciate your call. All right, we have our guest hooked up. We ready? All right. Well, let's say welcome to Sister Williams from the States. Welcome, sister.
Good morning, Mr. Mohammed. How are you?
Yes, good morning. Good morning. Miss Williams is an immigration attorney. She operates in the Northern California area. She is director of the GENNA. Is that the right way to put that? GENNA Immigration Services?
Yeah, it's Gina. Gina Immigration
GINA,
Services.
GINA Immigration Services. Welcome again, sister. We appreciate your coming.
Thank you.
I wanted to jump directly into, well, just so that folks will know, you're originally from Belize, Dangriga specifically. You grew up in Belize City, graduate of St. Catherine's. I could remember those things from our last conversation. Am I correct?
I'm from PG, not Dangriga.
Okay, from Punta Gorda. All right. Can we jump directly into looking at what we've been seeing on television at the U.S. border? Firstly, what is zero tolerance? What is that policy?
Well, a zero tolerance policy really addresses the issue of crossing the border without inspection, meaning with no visa, and so this administration has upped the ante on that, and so that's what you're seeing on the news a lot, where families are being separated, and the whole issue around asylum for some of those people have been has been changed. It's not as easy anymore, and so now there's new there are new interview policies, because when people come in and ask for asylum, they typically are given a credible fear hearing to assure that they're eligible for asylum. It's been Things have been changed in that it's not as easy anymore, and zero tolerance is really talking about, we're not going to put up with keeping you in detention and allowing you to just come in. Mm-hmm. So we're ratcheting up the strictness of the ability of people to come in here even when they're asking for help. So we're in a pretty serious situation right now around illegal border crossings.
Well, clearly the optics of what we're getting around the world is mothers, especially your parents generally, being separated from their children. How is that occurring? Take us through the steps of how that in fact takes place. Why are the children being placed in one area and the parents in another?
Well, to be perfectly honest, that's a policy that's been around for a long time. It's just now gotten the media has gotten wind of that, and so it's become a rallying cry for the very tough and negative policies that are happening around immigration on a whole. But truthfully, separation of adults and children has been happening for quite a long time, and so I think what the issue is now is that the public has gotten wind of it, and so it's really blown up. The way that detention works is kind of the way prison works, and I think that's why the policy is like that, is that they do not mix minors and adults in detention facilities, and so I think the solution would be to have family detention, which they have now. The solution would be to have no detention at all, but realistically, they're going to continue to detain people, right? So the solution that they're trying to come to now is to have family detention. To be perfectly honest, there are a lot of people that are coming in with minors that are not necessarily these children's parents nor relatives, right? And so that's where you see a lot of complication happening, is in that if you cannot prove the relationship that you have to the minor, then the separation continues, and which is what we're seeing now in the attempt to reunify the children with the adults that they came in. There's because there's an assumption, and like you said, the optics around the world is this. The optics are that that the children that are coming in with adults are typically the children of these adults, and it's not necessarily always the case,
I see.
right?
I see.
And so now reunification has become an even bigger problem. One, because you can't make the you can't make the connection between the children and the adults, but also there's some adults who have already been deported, who've already returned. The children have Some of the children have been sent to different states because that's the way detention works, right? If you come into the Texas border or the Arizona border, you're not going to necessarily be detained there.
Right.
You can be sent anywhere throughout the U.S.,
Because it's
which
federal.
is why it's becoming so hard
Yeah.
to reunify these kids.
Yeah. The President of the United States and the Republicans who support him are blaming the Democrats, and I'm getting light of what you're saying, that in fact this quote-unquote zero tolerance of separating children from parents has been even before Trump. But explain to us, that would mean that this was first enacted during Obama's time? Is that what that is saying?
And no, even before
Even
that,
before
that,
Obama?
yes.
Well, what
because,
what do they mean that it is the Democrats that are holding back the correction of this policy in the Congress? What does that mean?
They can't because this whole immigration situation is a partisan game, right?
Very
We are
much so.
coming up to general elections in November, and so everybody is finger pointing. It's not just the Republicans saying it's the Democrats and vice versa. They can't come up with a policy because they're not agreeing, because we have general elections coming up November 6th. So it's everybody's campaigning right now, and immigration is a huge piece of the pie, right? So that's the end game for a lot of the politicians that are running for election and re-election, and so nobody wants to be the one to come up with any kind of I mean, if the Republicans come up with any kind of humane policy to address the immigration situation, it's not going to get signed by the Democrats and vice versa. And so it's not just Republicans saying it's the Democrats' fault. Democrats always say, also
saying
it's the Republicans' fault.
Okay, so it's a blame
so
game.
It's not
it's a blame game, and I'm glad you're putting it in the context
it's a blame
of
game, and the immigrants are the ones who are really suffering through this whole thing.
Yes.
And the bottom line is that Donald Trump was elected. Part of his platform, why he got he didn't get the popular support, but he got a lot of support behind him, was because he promised to be tough on immigration. And so now they can't backpedal, which is the whole chaos you're seeing, is that they're trying to pass tough policies, but then there's a lot of pushback. Because ultimately what we need here is comprehensive immigration reform, where these people that are here that are undocumented must be legalized, because there's no way to deport that many people. There are just too many, and we don't have the capacity. So even though the Republicans are appointing all these judges and trying to get these cases through and trying to deport all these people, it's not possible. And so he talked tough, and now he's got to back up his tough talk, and that's where you see the Republicans. The Republican senators, congressmen are trying to support that, right? Meanwhile, the Democrats are trying to show that that they are pro-immigrant. But with the current constitution of the Congress and the Senate, it's literally impossible for the Democrats to get anything done.
Yeah, the composition. It also appears, Ms. Williams, that there is also a strategy on the part of the immigrants to take advantage of this chaos at the border, the sentiment that obviously has developed over the implementation of this policy, to try to, in a way, force the United States to adjust and to open the door to allow them in, despite the fact that the United States is saying, you cannot go through that process of trying to get refugee status in the way that you're doing. You have to go through another method in order for you to enter the United States. The point I'm making is that while we are looking at it and we're feeling very sentimental, especially about seeing children being separated from their parents, it does appear that there's also a strategy on the part of those who are using this situation to try to force the United States' hand in this very embarrassing, as I say, optics that the entire world is looking at.
Mm-hmm. Well, honestly, the numbers at the border are way down. So there are people, I think, who do genuinely need to who are genuinely refugees who do need to come in. And I think that the idea that they're taking advantage, I don't know that I agree with that conception, but I think that people genuinely from countries like Guatemala and El Salvador, Honduras, people genuinely are in a lot of trouble, and they fear for their lives, which is why they're fleeing to the border. But in fact, even given these optics that are being watched globally, the numbers are way down than they were, let's say, in 2014 or 2012, and so we have much less people coming in at this point. And I think that it's because of the publicity that the U.S. Has gotten. People who wants to come in with their kids and get separated, right? So it's actually serving as a deterrent in a weird way. Mm-hmm. And so there are less people entering at this juncture than there've been in the past.
Is there a reason?
In 2014. Between 2012 and 2014, 65,000 young people came in, right? And these were unaccompanied minors. Mm. Those numbers have been cut by way less than half. Mm. And so, and then, families coming in or, parents with children coming in, those numbers are way down as well.
Yeah. One of the things that came up in our last conversation that we had was the fact that this tough immigration policy is not, in fact, something that was created only during Donald Trump's time. But Mr. Obama has gone down as being his administration has been one of the major, deporting of individuals back to their country. This is a fact, is it?
Well, you know what? It's the title that Barack Obama received as deporter in chief is actually somewhat inaccurate because the numbers looked the way they did during his administration because those were people who received final orders of deportation during that period. In order for you to receive a final order of deportation, it means that your case has already gone through the process, which can take a number of years, right? So by the time they got to the place where they were being actually deported, and physically deported, because I think we talked about the last time that deportation is a legal process, right? Mm-hmm. It's not just pick up somebody and put them outside. You have to go through a legal process before you are finally deported. Mm-hmm. And so by the time a lot of those cases got to the final order, they had those cases that had already been in the pipeline during the Bush administration, right? And so between oh gosh, I'm spacing on the name of the president before Bush.
Bush. Clinton.
I'm sorry?
Clinton.
Yeah. How could I forget him? Yeah. But so between Clinton and Bush, there were massive numbers of deportations, and one of the reasons for that is that that's when a lot of the pretty draconian immigration laws were implemented, right? So like the Immigration Reform and Responsibility Act is called IRA. The Real ID Act, so those are sections of the immigration nationality law that most cases get adjudicated under. Um, you know, that's when a lot of those laws were instituted, right? So by the time that Obama came in, those laws were in place, and a lot of those people who had received final orders, um, which I should say that under IRA, which is the law that I just talked about, certain crimes, certain enumerated crimes became deportable crimes that were not before deportable crimes. So crimes such as DUI, domestic violence. Um, even some misdemeanor charges became deportable crimes, right? And so you had now this huge number of people that before would not have been deported.
Right.
But then you got this law in place,
Okay.
and then here comes Barack Obama in office,
Right.
and during that period is when a lot of those cases came to
Indeed.
the final order.
So they were already in the
So it made it
pipe. They were in the
appear that
pipeline.
they were already in the pipeline.
Yeah,
So it
yeah.
made it appear that it was his administration that was
Right.
deporting all these people.
I'm glad that you're
They
making
did
that
deport
clear.
a lot of people during those 8 years,
Yeah.
yes, but the numbers are skewed because like I said, the others were already in the pipeline.
Okay, very, very important. You also mentioned the fact, and I saw it on your page, that the highest number of individuals who are falling into the cracks right now with this zero tolerance implementation are, in fact, our neighbors here in Central America, from Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador. Why those particular? Is it only because of the very critical conditions in those countries, or is there anything peculiar about those three countries having the most persons at the border?
Well, those are the first of all, those are the countries that are nearest to us, but those are the countries that are in the most crisis.
But
right
why
now.
not Mexicans,
So,
for example? Why not Mexicans?
Well, it's interesting. Mexico's numbers are way down, and I think that's probably because they don't have the same issues around cartels and drug issues and gang issues that are happening that's happening more in Central America. The other issue is that Mexico is much larger than those countries, right? So people have the ability to move further down, to relocate in Mexico. In Honduras, Guatemala, I mean, maybe not so much Guatemala because we're not getting as many folks out of Guatemala as we are out of El Salvador and Honduras, right? So those countries are smaller. They have really bad gang issues, drug issues, violence, and so the pressure there is really forcing those people out.
Yeah.
People are desperate in those countries, right? Honduras was named one of the most violent countries in the world. So
Indeed.
people can't survive in those places.
Indeed.
And at the end of the day, a lot of what's happening in all of those countries, including Belize, are based on U.S. foreign policy that happened. This has been going on for a long time.
Quite a bit.
Right, where the U.S. has meddled in those country governments and has caused all kinds of chaos. Layer that with the massive deportations from the U.S. that are happening of gang members, into gang members, drug dealers, gun runners, whatever, that are being deported back into those societies. They don't have the capacity to handle those people, and so it's a real chicken and egg situation. It's a real, it's a situation that that you don't know where it started, where and where it's going to end, right? And so you're having those people. We're deporting people from the U.S. back into those societies, violent criminals, whatever else, and so they're affecting the people down there. So they're pushing those people over here, and so that's one of the principal reasons. Just about everybody that I see that comes out of a country like El Salvador is running from gang violence or some kind of drug cartel issue or whatever.
Yeah, Ms. Williams, have you had any dealings with Belizeans who are seeking refugee status in the United States?
The numbers of Belizeans seeking refugee status, in my experience, is very, very low, and there are a number of them, but they're typically cases around sexual orientation issues and domestic violence, and now, of course, the domestic violence numbers are going to go away because that asylum prong has been has been removed by
removed.
this administration.
Very
So you
interesting.
can no longer seek asylum for domestic violence. You can no longer seek asylum for gang affiliate, gang fear of gang violence. And so, that's one of the things that's going to push those numbers way down. But Belizeans, I very, very rarely see them
Yeah.
um, applying for that through that category.
We'll talk a little bit about DACA. You had given us some oversight of it the last time. It was the major controversy when we spoke to you the last time. What's the status of DACA? Is it still ongoing? First of all, what is it?
DACA
First of all, Ms. Williams, what is it? What is DACA? And then, is DACA still alive?
DACA is the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, and it was a deferment. The deferral meaning, which is the principal aspect of this law. It or actually, it was an executive action by Barack Obama. It is a deferment of deportation for people who were brought to the U.S. as children. They should have entered before 2007, and they need to be between the ages of 15 and 31. So when they apply, that is, they needed to have attended school in the U.S. and you'd be able to prove that, and that kind of thing. So that if you achieve DACA status, then and you come into the notice of immigration because you're undocumented, then your DACA status protects you and defers your deportation, and so that benefit gives you work authorization and it gives you the ability to travel. It's a very, very important piece of legislation because it allowed people who were brought here as children to be able to leave, brought here illegally as children, to be able to leave the U.S. and re-enter and re-enter legally. So that's a really critical piece. Not only the deferment, but the ability to travel. And so the status of DACA right now, this administration has vowed that it will get rid of it. And as you all have seen in the news, the millions of children or not millions, but probably 800,000 children or people who were brought here as children have fought back hard. The activists have fought back hard to say to this administration, no, you will not take this away. They are determined to take it away. So new DACAs cannot be filed, but right now, people who are already in DACA status, because DACA is good for 2 years at a time. If your DACA is about to expire, you're allowed to renew. So the renewal process is still in place, but the new applications are not being accepted. It's not that DACA is gone; it's just that it's kind of in limbo right now because it's in the courts. And so I encourage anybody who has DACA status. And it's about to expire. If you're 3 months out from expiring, it's really, really advised to apply now to renew, because we don't know when the renewal process is going to be taken away, and it's taking a really long time. It's taking about 3 months or so to get the renewal adjudicated. So critical to stay in that status.
So it sounds like DACA is not a path to citizenship, but rather just an allowance that you get to stay within the United States for education, etc. But have you seen, and is it possible to move from the DACA status towards citizenship or permanent residence?
Yes, and that's where the travel travel permission aspect of DACA is critical, because the way that immigration works is that if you cross the border without a visa, it's called the term of art is entering without inspection. So that when you enter and you're not acknowledged, you enter physically but not legally. You are not acknowledged as being here. So you're entering without inspection. It's called EWI, EWI, entering without inspection. If you enter without inspection, it doesn't matter how long you're here. Doesn't matter if you marry an American, have U.S. citizen children who can petition on your behalf. You cannot petition. I mean, they cannot petition. You cannot adjust status if you have not entered legally.
Wow.
And so that's where that piece is really, really critical.
So you're really saying that those Belizeans were entered through the back, as we call it, and didn't correct their status, but they married an American that because they can't show how they got into the United States, they would not be eligible to be able to become permanent residents?
They would not be eligible
Wow.
unless they qualify for a waiver. And waivers are really, really difficult to get.
I see.
And so, there are things like there's the section, the INA Section 245I waiver, and that waiver is where you've entered without inspection, entered illegally, and prior to, I'm forgetting the date, a family member has filed a petition on your behalf, even though you weren't eligible to adjust, and even if the petition failed, it allows you a waiver where you can say somebody applied for my green card or applied for a petition for me in the past. I can use that, pay the government at a $2,500 waiver fee plus my application fees for my green card, and I can adjust status with that waiver. So that's one type of waiver. Another is it's a hardship waiver, the 601 or 601A waiver, where it's hardship to an immediate relative who is either a citizen or a green card holder. So a spouse or a child, let's say, who is very ill and will suffer a hardship if you are deported or if you can't be here. So if you came in without inspection and you have a relative that qualifies, American relative that qualifies, you can apply for that waiver. And the way that these things work is that it's not that you wouldn't be able to get a green card. It's just that you can't adjust status here in the U.S. You would have to leave. So there are two different ways that you can get a green card. Right? Is adjustment of status in the United States, or through consular processing outside of the U.S. The problem with the consular processing piece is that if you have to leave and you've been here for more than 180 days without inspection or illegally, then you are barred for 10 years from returning.
Wow.
Right? So if you want to do consular processing and not get that bar, then you would have to qualify for 601 waiver, the hardship waiver, before you leave, so that you can leave, and that waiver allows you to come back in with your green card.
Tell us about
Right. The other
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
the other piece is there's the other 601 waiver that allows you to adjust status in the U.S. Right? So there's adjustment of status where you get the green card here, and consular processing where you exit to get it.
Where you go
Either
outside.
way, one of those waivers would allow you to get your green card. But like I said, if you entered without inspection, you crossed the border illegally, then it's almost impossible to get a green card, and to adjust status, and which is why the travel piece of DACA is really, really important, because if you get permission to travel, to leave the U.S. and re-enter, when you re-enter, you re-enter with DACA, right? And that's a legal entry. So you get your passport stamped, it shows you have inspection, and then you can continue from there to adjust status and get petitioned by an immediate relative. So it's really, really valuable piece of legislation DACA was.
We know over the years that, and by the way, DACA is only up to 31 years old, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so we're not talking about anybody outside of that age cohort. It's for specifically
15 to 31.
31, okay. We know that over the years, Ms. Williams, there have been thousands and thousands of Belizeans who have gone into the United States on visitors visa and overstayed their time, some of them there for 20 odd years, but their entrance into the United States was as a visitor's visa. What can you advise those Belizeans if they have not taken advantage of amnesty, which was, I think, back in the 80s, and they are still basically in a limbo, can't return to Belize, can't really get a social security card, because in fact they are in the United States illegally? What would be your advice to them?
Well, for those people, the lucky part is that they entered with a visa.
Okay.
So you're in your hypothetical. You said when they came in with a visitor visa. That's the big piece. That's really critical, because they have legal entry then they have a possibility of being sponsored by a relative who is either a citizen or a green card holder. Now, there are many people that I meet that just never took that step. They have relatives that can petition for them, but it just doesn't happen. So my advice to those people is that if you have um, that possibility, you should really take advantage of it because it's extremely valuable. And I know that there are a lot of people that have lived in the U.S. illegally for a long time, and they just get used to it. They're not they're kind of they're kind of in that limbo, and they're used to being in that limbo. But let me say about that is that this is not the time to stay in that limbo, because we are now in a situation where the this government is not at all um, tolerant. And so if you get picked up for anything at all, you're going to be put into the deportation process, and it's not worth it if you have an ability to adjust, right?
Yeah.
If you can, if you're married, or I've had a number of cases where the husband, for example, is a citizen, and the wife comes in from Belize or wherever else, and is living with her husband, who was legal. I mean, who was a citizen, and she entered with a visa. For years and years, the husband does not apply for a green card for the wife, and it's really it's very puzzling to me. Um, but I've had, I don't know, 4 or 5 people like that from Belize that have been here for 20 years that are married to Americans that never adjust status.
Mm.
And so, it's not the time, regardless of your how comfortable you are in your undocumented status. It's not the time to sit back. You really should get yourself
Get
legal,
yourself
because
right.
right now, as we can see,
Yeah.
this government is even going after naturalized citizens.
Yeah, that's the one I
And
need
so
to. Yeah.
it's no joke.
Tell us
It's no
about
joke.
that,
So
because that is saying that even those persons who have been naturalized as an American, that there's still a possibility that you could lose your citizenship and be deported. Can you, and also the green card holders, tell us how that can take place. Because people always thought, well, let me become a citizen because at least they can't mess with me after I become a citizen. But that
mhm.
apparently has changed now.
Well, that's the process of denaturalization, and that too has been in existence for a very long time, but it's rare. It's not. This administration now is trying to make it something that is going to be that's going to become the norm. That you can be denaturalized if they can find that you lied in your application. And so there are a number of people that I have come across personally that have gotten their citizenship um, not in the most savory way, and so those people should be worried right now, because the denaturalization process, while it is rare and it can take a long time, it's very expensive to fight. Number one, but the really sad and critical and awful thing about that process is that every every derivative status of a relative that you have petitioned for through your own citizenship is going to be affected. So if you lose your citizenship and you brought in your children and your spouse, they will be denaturalized as well,
Wow.
because
Wow.
it's kind of the fruit of the poisonous tree, right? So if
Wow.
the underlying um, naturalization, the underlying citizenship, the petition for all these other people was no good. So it means
Wow.
that your status was no good.
So if you
And
are a
so
liar in getting it,
it's
and
very, very serious.
it is serious, because if they detect that you lied on any part of your process, then that delegitimizes anybody else who you have filed for. That's very important.
Right.
You've also said that unpaid traffic tickets and these other things can also make you end up in the system. Can you possibly, with a green card, be deported because you end up in the criminal justice or even in the municipal system, the what you would call misdemeanor system?
Well, traffic violations of that sort are not deportable. Um, Yeah, you wouldn't end up in immigration
Okay,
problems
all
because of
right,
traffic tickets.
all right.
But depends. So if you are talking about, multiple moving violations that become misdemeanors, that kind of thing. So misdemeanors can be accumulated and then be regarded within the immigration system as a felony. So like three different types of misdemeanors can be considered, can put together by the uh, by the government
Yeah,
and be characterized as a felony.
yeah,
So um, I can't, right now, so things like shoplifting. So if you have, three or four shoplifting convictions, that can be considered a felony, right?
yeah,
Once it's put together that way, or things like vandalism. I've seen people be put into the deportation process because of things like vandalism, meaning writing graffiti. So if you're or cutting somebody's tire on their car, people do things like that
yeah,
on a daily basis.
yeah.
So if you've got three of those and you get picked up by the police and then you're convicted, you're automatically and you have a green card, you're automatically put into the deportation process because of it.
Yeah,
Because once you have three, once you have three of those convictions, they're then
clearly.
considered a felony, and then you're put into that system.
Is the
So,
uh-huh. Is the U.S.
oh, I mean,
is the
go,
U.S.
go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, is the U.S. immigration actually looking backward in terms of going over people's files and seeing who they may have missed, or is it that you have brought, by your action, you have brought attention to yourself in the in the criminal area, and as a result of being tagged, that's when the immigration begins to investigate and find out if your status is still valid?
Well, it's both, because with the denaturalization process, that an agency, an actual office has been opened, and they've hired 600 people
Wow.
to scattered around the U.S. and have dedicated something like 250 million dollars
Wow.
to fund that office that will and they are actually investigating.
Wow.
Unlike with the green card, there's not an investigation necessarily happening with everybody. You do have to come into their notice, and the way that a lot of people come into their notice is through through bad acts,
Uh,
right? So if you drink and drive, which is a very common thing in our community,
right,
right?
right,
Um, it's a culture, I think,
right.
not just from Belize, but from I have people
It's,
from different countries in Africa. I have people from places like Fiji, Mexico, El Salvador, whatever, where drinking and driving is a cultural thing,
yeah, yeah,
and they don't have the punitive aspects of their culture where if you do that, you're going to jail. Um, in the U.S., it's seen as a DUI is seen as a huge public health issue. If you drink and drive, you can kill a bunch of people, and you can kill yourself. And so,
yeah, yeah.
there's very very low tolerance, and so people will typically get themselves into a tangle with DUI, and it seems counterintuitive because when you come out of a culture where drinking and driving is a part of your culture, um, it seems counterintuitive that DUI would be deportable. They're highly deportable offenses,
Wow.
right? And so if you drink and drive, you've got three. Once you have three DUIs, you are deportable, and you're deportable and with a permanent bar.
Mm,
you
mm,
know but
mm.
because I think that we talked about this the last time. When people are deported, they are deported with what's called a bar, right? And meaning the number of years that you cannot return to the US. And so you have 3-year bars, 5-year bars, 10, 15, 20 permanent, right? And DUI and domestic violence, which are both rampant in Belizean population here in the U.S., those are permanently barred
Wow,
deportations, right?
wow, wow.
And so, and so whenever I talk to Belizean audiences, I always address those two issues because it doesn't matter if you have a green card. Your green card is not it's not permanent or
Yeah,
semi-permanent,
yeah,
as
indeed.
we're beginning to see now. If you have those convictions, you will, and you come into the notice of law enforcement. You know, law enforcement, municipal police or whatever, sheriff or whatever, used to be empowered by what was called Immigration Nationality Act, Section 287G, that would empower the police to connect those people with those convictions with ICE. It's no longer the case, but it doesn't mean that they're not still doing that.
Yeah.
287G is no longer law, but there's still municipalities that are allowing their law enforcement to connect those people with
Yeah,
those
interesting,
convictions to
interesting.
ICE.
Two
Right,
last,
so it's called an ICE hold.
yeah,
So if you have those convictions, if you have DUI and you come into the notice of law enforcement, they're going to call ICE,
yeah,
and then
yeah,
you're going to be detained,
yeah,
right? And then you're going to be put into the deportation process, and they're going to try to strip you of your green card. Now, if you have one or two DUIs, you can typically defend against that and keep your green card. But once you hit three, you are deportable, and there's no
you're in
turning back.
trouble. Yeah,
You will not be given bond,
yeah.
and you'll have to fight your case from within detention.
What's the
So
legal,
those are
what's the legal position of those individuals with green card leaving the United States and the time allowed for them to be out of the United States before they can lose their green card?
good question. The permissible time to be out of the U.S. When you have a green card is 6 months. Anything over 6 months, anything 6 months, between 6 months and a year, you can typically defend. But if you have more than a year, well, more than 6 months, um, but less than a year, you will have to begin explaining if you have one instance of that. When you have more than one instance of that, the government begins to believe that you have abandoned your green card status. You no longer want to be a resident here. And so, excuse me, when it's time for you to return to the U.S., you will most likely be stopped at the border. And then I've seen instances where they will confiscate the green card at the border. They might parole you in, but then they'll put you into the deportation process, to take away to strip you of the green card.
Oh, wow.
The other thing I've seen, and I just had a case like this of a man from Venezuela who stayed out twice. Twice, he's had the green card. He's had his green card for 8 years. He stayed at the U.S. twice, more than 6 months, but under a year. So one time he was out 7 months. The other time he was out 9 months. They are refusing his citizenship.
Wow.
We went into that interview. I wasn't confident. I told him, look, this is going to be an issue for you. It's going to be an issue for certain. So, but he didn't believe it. And he said, come on, it's only twice in a period of 10 years. We have had to jump through hoops to prove that he didn't abandon his citizenship.
Wow.
And so, after that, typically a naturalization interview that's straightforward takes roughly about 15 to 20 minutes, right? We were in there for 2 hours.
Wow.
And this officer really gave this guy a hard time. So especially if you're coming from a Latin American country
South, yeah.
or from the Middle East or from Africa, they will give you a hard time if you stayed out. And so I really advise people, I cannot tell you how many Belizeans come to me and say, oh, I got my green card, but I was living in Belize for X amount of time. You've abandoned that green card then, especially if you were not paying taxes here, if you did not maintain a residence here, if you do not have a job here. And so you get the green card and people think, oh, I'm safe and I can go back home. And people want to be home. I don't blame them, But before you do that, become a citizen, because if you become a citizen, then you can stay out as long as you want. But with the green card, 6 months, and the 6 months, there used to be wiggle room up until 2 years ago. Now, very, very, very strict.
Yeah.
And so that card, that status is extremely valuable, right? So many people want it. So once you've gotten it and you've had the opportunity to get it, you really should protect it,
Yeah.
right? And if you've gotten it through marriage, it's only 3 years after you've gotten your residency that you can become a citizen. And then if you've gotten it any other way, 5 years. So it's not a long time, to make that sacrifice to move from resident to citizen. And a lot of people, not just from Belize, a lot of people, I myself, was in that category, waited 30 years before I became a citizen because I clung so hard to my Belizean nationality.
Mm.
But at the end of the day, if you don't have that protection, you're deportable, and it's very, very easy to get into that place, right, where
Yeah.
where you're you get kicked into that place where all of a sudden you're defending
Yeah.
your green card. So if you can become a citizen, you really should. And it's not, I became a citizen a few years ago. I don't feel any less Belizean,
Yeah.
So
Well,
I'm testament to that.
it's
And
interesting.
so
It's
go ahead,
interesting
sorry.
that you're saying that because, most of us still take citizenship, especially the oath that you take in the United States, as sort of disrespecting Belize and saying that how could you say you're a Belizean and you gave an oath to another country. And it's part of the debate that we're having here as to to what degree should Belizeans abroad, even if they become citizens, participate in the development process, particularly government in Belize. But that's another question. I really wanted to weigh something else in your direction, Ms. Williams, and I know you work in a very strict legal environment, and we are faced with a very serious hiccup here. Over the last 35, 36 years, it is clear in our Constitution that any individual who comes from a country that does not recognize the territorial integrity of Belize, that is Guatemala, cannot become a citizen of Belize unless he or she denounces their previous citizenship, which is Guatemala in this case. The problem is that the denunciation process is questionable because Guatemala, in its constitution, does not allow denunciation, or Guatemalans consider a Guatemalan always a Guatemalan. So what we have here are thousands of individuals who have been naturalized as Belizeans. They're from Guatemala, and this issue of the unconstitutionality of that is now becoming an issue, particularly because we are now renewing and refreshing the voters list, and many of these naturalized Belizeans are on the voters list. And there are those who are saying that they should not be allowed to re-register because they are constitutionally not accepted as citizenship because of that clause. The other side of the argument is, man, then done there, they've been here for years, they are like Belizeans, so we have to, kind of override that constitutional prohibition and just allow them to continue to live in the status that they're living. Can you weigh in on that?
Well, that's a tough one. It's a tough one. It's, it's and I think that Belizean law needs to prevail, and if it's going to be any different, then the law needs to be amended, right? So I think that Belize needs to go by its laws, because if it doesn't go by its laws, then it's not going to be, their rules are not going to be respected. Which I think is that's the indignation that's happening here in the U.S. is that, wait a minute, our laws are being breached, right? And so why do we have to amend our laws to accommodate these people that are not of us, right? And so I think that it's a very, very delicate line. It's a very delicate balance between Belizean sovereignty and the world stage, because the world is watching, right? So if you eject these people, summarily eject these people that have been there for a while, that consider themselves Belizean and so on and so on. You get into it's a very messy situation, but at the same time, what does your constitution say? So I think, if they're going to stay, then it requires a constitutional amendment. But if they have to go, then that's going to be a tough thing to accomplish. And given from what I can see anyway, I'm not an expert in Belize Guatemala relations, but given what I've seen in the news, and I try to keep up with it a little bit. I try not to read too much about it because it's very upsetting to me. But um, given the situation between Belize and Guatemala right now, which seems to be very, very precarious and a little dangerous,
Yeah.
you want to be. I mean, what would it look like, to eject those people? What are the numbers we're talking about?
Well,
And
yeah.
and how do you denaturalize these people, right? Is there a process for that? So that's I think it's critical to do it very, very carefully, given that the world is watching, number one, but number two, the relations between the two countries right now is just seems very very tenuous.
Yes, indeed, indeed. We'll give you a last word, Ms. Williams. We really appreciate every time we talk to you. It's a lesson, education, really. We're learning so much, particularly those of us who are in that legal limbo in the United States. Your advice is always very, very good. I don't know if you want to give your phone number or a way in which people can reach you, because the last time we had several phone calls of individuals who wanted to make connection with you.
Hmm. Yes, I actually connected with quite a few people. Um, I when I'll say my last words, and then I'll provide my phone number um, and my email address. But I want to say to folks, if you have an opportunity to get a green card, don't waste that opportunity, because things are. If you want to come here, um, even in a semi-permanent way, it's really important to take advantage of any opportunities that you have. I've seen way too many people lose the opportunity, and when it comes to visa petitioning, you really have to pay attention to the timeline, because if you lose the opportunity, it's really hard to get it back. And one of the categories that I see a lot where people lose the opportunity because it takes so long for them to be able to get the green card through that is through sibling petitions, right? So if you have a sister or brother that can petition on your behalf, you really do have to watch the clock, right? And the way that you do that is there's something called a visa bulletin at state.gov. So if you go on www.state.gov, you can look at the visa bulletin so that you can get a sense of when your petition becomes current, right? When it's time for you to apply for the visa, because if you miss that deadline, then you miss it. And sibling petitions take an awfully long time to become current, right? So right now, I think for Belize, it's something like anywhere from between 9 to 12 years before you can get that green card from there. And so it's important not to miss it. The other thing is, if you have a sibling that is able to petition on your behalf, you should do it now, because this administration is getting rid of that visa category.
Hmm.
But if Donald Trump has his way, brothers and sisters will no longer be able to petition for their siblings.
Wow.
And but it's not retroactive, right? So if you get that petition in now, even if they get rid of that category, they still have to honor your
Yeah,
petition.
yeah.
But we're looking at probably within the next year or so. If he has his way, that category is going to be taken away.
Hmm.
And so if you have that opportunity, you should really try to use it. The other thing is, if you have a green card, don't stay out more than 6 months. It's really, really important. If you have your green card for 3 years and you got it through your husband or wife, you should become a citizen. And I know that I was talking before about we were talking about the oath that you have to take and so on. We are one of the few countries that are lucky enough, Belize is, that allows for dual citizenship. A lot of countries don't. And so you can maintain your Belizean identity. Once you become a citizen, you can go back and forth. I have a lot of family members that do that. They go back and forth to Belize a lot. They're still very Belizean in their hearts. So it's really critical, to protect yourself. For on a personal note, my decision to become an American citizen was for protection. Not because I wanted to, turn my back on Belize or anything like that. But practically speaking, it's really important because it's too easy to lose, right? And so it's very important for you to protect yourself that way. Um, the other thing is, if you're undocumented and you have a way to adjust status and get legal, you should do it as soon as you can. And lastly, I want to leave you with this. Don't waste your time and your money dealing with notarios, which is something that we do a lot in our community. We go to what are called immigration legal services, which are typically legal operations that will take our money and not get you anywhere, and sometimes land you in deportation. So be very careful with who you choose, um, and just be circumspect about how you handle your process. But at the end of the day, the process is your process, and so it's really your responsibility to make sure that you're going the right way. Right? Don't hand your stuff off to a lawyer and say, okay, my lawyer is taking care of it. Stay on top of your process, and just beware.
Yeah, very, very valuable. How can they get in contact with you?
Okay, so my name is Sharon Williams, and my phone number is area code 510-288-8686. 510-288-8686. My email address is S as in Sam, K as in Kite, my last name Williams, at YURUM as in Mary, EI, N as in Nancy, and the word law, LAW.com. And that's SK Williams at UrumeLaw.com. Urume, I'm a Garifuna, and so Urume is our Garifuna word for St. Vincent, which is where we trace what I call our intermediate ancestry before or after Africa, after the Middle Passage. So Urume is St. Vincent in Garifuna, and our practice is named after that.
Give that phone number one more time.
I'd be happy to answer some questions for you, and either by email or phone.
Give the phone number one more time, please.
It's 510 area code 510-288-8686.
All right, very good. And your relation to Mr. Harold Zuniga?
Harold is my uncle. He's my mother's youngest brother.
All right, very good. I just wanted to make that connection since we all know the physical therapist, Mr. Harold Zuniga. Yeah. Sister,
Yes,
we really appreciate.
We grew up together, and he's my mom's baby brother.
Okay. We are going to come back at you, the value of talking with you is immense. And this issue of immigration is a major one in the United States right now, and a lot of Belizeans are very much caught up in that process. But I'm glad you also weighed in on our issue that we're dealing with here with those naturalized Guatemalans, and I'm glad that you pointed out that it would be a very huge issue if we were to make a move to suddenly denaturalize that many Guatemalans. The numbers is supposed to be in the tens of thousands, but something clearly has to be done, because the law is the law, and the law has to have sovereignty and be respected. So I'm glad you weighed in on that to give us some thought in that area. I want to thank you again, and hope that we
Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate your time.
Hope we can talk, and I thank you for your time likewise. All right, Sister Sean. Interesting conversation there with Ms. Williams, and I want to give her number again for those who would like to reach out to her in the California area. It is 510-288-8686. I repeat, 510-288-8686. 8686, and I advise that you utilize her gracious offer to give, advice. Uh, there are many Belizeans who are in that limbo and really need to not take things for granted, especially during this time where the Trump administration seems to be gung-ho on collecting you and sending you back home out of the United States. We also wanted to say how happy we felt last night when we saw the young boy Grayson Cadle being put in an ambulance and being taken out. Again, we say respect to Miss Yvonne Burke and the work that she has been doing over many, many years. And we are very thankful that this young man is on his way to try to get some attention paid to his very severe burns. You said there's a call?
Yeah.
Welcome, caller. Welcome.
Hello?
Yes, welcome, sir.
Morning, sir.
Morning.
I'm just calling to give you some like a public awareness, no? So I am like a 52-year-old man. I have glaucoma.
Okay.
I have been in Brody's several times looking for my medication. I use an eye drop by the name of the COSUP. Okay?
Yes.
It is a medication. I prefer getting it at Brody's because Brody's have it the cheapest, no? But I've been in there on several occasions over the past 2 months, and I keep hearing they're getting it soon, come back next week. Okay? But this week I went there specifically on Tuesday, and I overheard a conversation with one of the pharmacists, and after she finished with a customer, I spoke to her, and I asked her about the COSUP, and she saying, well, apart they have it in stock, well, not in stock, but they have it at the customs. They apparently they're having problems with the Minister of Health. Hello?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Yeah, they're requesting some JDB, JDP, some kind of paperwork. Okay, but my thing is, so what are we to do? Well, this eye drop, I need this eye drop. It is for my eyes.
Yeah.
If I can't get this eye drop, then what would happen to my eyes? I won't be able to see it, and I won't be able to work. And how would I be able to feed my family? No.
Yeah.
And I sure the COSUP is not the only drug that individuals are trying to get that they can't get.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just here to try. I called this morning to just give you this information and to try to bring across awareness. No.
Yes, sir. Tell us the name of the drug again.
The name of the drug is COSUP.
How you go?
COSUP. COSOP.
COSOP.
Yes, sir.
COSUP.
COSUP.
Okay.
Okay. Again,
and it's
I prefer getting it.
Brody's that brings it in.
Yes, Brody's brings it in.
Okay.
I prefer getting it from Brody's because of the price. If I go to somewhere like I believe Medical Associates, I would pay double the price, or I would pay.
Right. I understand that. But is it that only Brody's is being prevented from bringing it in because of the ministry's restriction, or the other pharmacists are having the same problem?
Well, to my understanding, Brody's is they have a wholesale, so they bring it in.
Oh, they're the importer.
So the other pharmacies would buy from them.
From Brody's, yeah.
So if they don't have, then they can't sell it retail, or they can't sell it to other pharmacies, so they could have it.
Correct, understand.
And I've been to several other pharmacies, and none of them have it.
I see. All right. Well, it's something that we need to find out why the Ministry of Health. I understand that they're doing a whole new, a complete new regime with pharmaceuticals being brought in.
Okay.
They're trying to be stricter, I understand, but I've also been told by a pharmacist that there could be some business there where they're trying to control who brings in the pharmaceuticals.
Okay.
And they're justifying it by health concerns of pharmaceuticals being brought in that is not quality.
Okay. Well,
you know, there's all kind of. Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Well, I have been buying drugs from Brody's from since I was as far back as I could remember.
Yeah.
And I know Brody's brings in only quality brands.
Very quality.
I mean,
yes.
I don't know, firsthand, but I mean, from what I could see,
Yeah.
I have only bought only good brands from Brody's.
Yes, indeed.
I mean, this course up, I've been on it for the past several years, and the brand is good. It has been working since I've been diagnosed. Maybe 8 or 9 years ago, I've been on the course up.
Yeah.
And it's just now for the past. Well, sometimes sometimes I get it, sometimes I don't get it. But now it's been a long period of time.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
it's important to find out why it's tied up in the customs and.
Well,
and
they're saying, like I said, I spoke to one of the pharmacists there, and they're saying it's some JDB paperwork or it's some paperwork. But my thing is, so what am I to do, or what are we, the public, to
no,
do?
it's a legitimate question.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So because now, what am I going to do now if I don't have my?
Yeah, indeed.
And it's because of the government holding back their stock of medication.
Indeed. And you know, that's a very serious case you're bringing out, because people depend on these pharmaceuticals.
Yes, sir. Because it's not only Microsoft. I'm calling because of Microsoft, because now I need Microsoft. But I'm sure there are other individuals, and I hope they will call in. I'm sure there are several individuals who have the same problem with other medications.
Yeah. Thank you very much for alerting us. It is an important public service announcement, my brother.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem, sir.
All right, good.
Have a good day.
Yeah, you too. I'm also reading here that my good friend Ronnie Castillo has been denied the access to hernia surgery. It's on the front page of the Amandala, and it's because the KHMH is only selecting certain surgeries that they are doing now, and apparently they are eliminating some.
All right, go on, Colin.
Also a very, very serious concern. Okay, we'll take this last call and we'll go to a break, and then we have some guests that we'll be bringing in. Welcome, caller.
Good morning, Nuri.
Good morning. Good morning.
Nuri, I just wanted to address the issue of the constitutional prohibition to the naturalization of persons coming from countries that have a claim and don't recognize the territorial integrity or sovereignty of Belize.
Yes, sir.
That constitutional provision, Nuri, is inviolable. It is one that has no proviso. There is no lacuna. There is no loophole to go around that. The Constitution does not allow for any qualification of that. So it's an express and absolute prohibition. Section 2 of the Constitution establishes that the Constitution is supreme law, that any law that comes into conflict with it is void to the extent of that conflict. So where the subsidiary legislation of the Immigration and Nationality Act grants a discretion to the minister, that discretion does not supersede the express prohibition in the Constitution. So the minister has to exercise his discretion within the parameters of that prohibition. He cannot exceed it. So it doesn't matter if he has that discretion. If he exercises it and grants nationality to Guatemalans, his act is ultra vires. Ultra vires the Immigration Nationality Act, and ultra vires the Constitution. It's in conflict and contradiction of the Constitution. As a result, it is void. It doesn't matter how long ago it happened. The only thing that can cure an unconstitutional act is an act of parliament to amend the constitution. So as long as the constitution has that express prohibition, there is no curing Guatemalans being given naturalization papers. It has to be ratified by parliament expressly to allow for those people to be legally recognized as Belizeans. So we are living a lie, and that lie is perpetrated by our leaders, and our people are being kept in a state of ignorance on purpose on this issue to our own detriment. There's another thing that has to be addressed along with that. The Constitution has no provision that circumscribes the right of Belizean citizens. So whether we are living in Belize or in the diaspora, as natural-born Belizeans, we enjoy the same rights as any Belizean. This means that you are entitled to be registered on the roll of electors as a Belizean. So this whole issue of you being told that there is a requirement, that requirement has no constitutional backing. And as a result, your constitutional right to exercise your franchise as a Belizean is being impeded. And you can challenge that in court as a member of the diaspora. The Constitution grants the government of Belize the power to amend the law to allow for the smooth running peace and tranquility of Belize. So they could make a law to accommodate the diaspora at any time. And it is incumbent upon them to do so because the diaspora contributes significantly to the Belizean economy.
Indeed.
There are two issues when you're talking about the economy, Nuri. The GNP, which is the gross national product, and the GDP, which is the gross domestic product. The GDP deals with production and revenue generation within the nation's boundaries, within its physical borders. The GNP speaks to the production and revenue generation of Belizeans anywhere they may roam, including Belize, the United States, England, Germany, wherever Belizeans may be. One of the ways that the contribution and the generation of revenue by the diaspora is manifest is in the remittances that are sent, but it's not the only way. And by virtue of those remittances, we have been able to track that is in the measure of $80 million a year. So every 10 years, the diaspora gives to Belize almost $1 billion. By virtue of that contribution alone, they deserve to be treated fairly and equally like any other Belizean. And certainly it is hypocrisy and downright treasonous to say that these Belizeans cannot vote, but people who should never be considered Belizeans can. And it is incumbent upon us, those who know and have knowledge of what should be and what should obtain, to educate our people, because there's nobody's teaching the Constitution in schools, Nuri.
I know this. I have a question for you, sir.
Sure, go right ahead.
Will you consider representing the interests of those diaspora aspirants that have been trying to address exactly what you are addressing in a legal way?
Certainly I am, but the thing, what I'm explaining to you, Nuri, I have offered myself, there is a process that has started. There are many people in the diaspora seeking to address this issue. What needs to happen is that there must be a coming together of all interested parties to put together the resources so that we can get this thing done, and done in a timely manner, because for way too long, this violation has been going unchecked.
Yes.
Now is the time. The Israelis have within their constitution an open door policy. And we know why that has happened, Nuri, because they were seeking to repatriate lands that they were not legally entitled to before 1948.
Yeah, and may I say something on that matter? The reason why, I don't know if you heard the conversation with
But
myself.
this is one of the reasons why I don't understand why we have Palestinians in Belize, Belizean Palestinians who are not supporting the diaspora in Belize.
It's difficult to understand any Belizean that's not supporting diaspora Belizeans abroad. It's difficult to understand. But yesterday we had a conversation with Mr. Hyde, Senior, and he has a problem with this way in which we use this word diaspora. But you pointed out the Israelis, and the whole concept of diaspora, as you know, come out of that Jewish history. And the Jews consider those in diaspora as being citizens of the Jewish nation. And so therefore, no matter where you are in the diaspora, you are still considered a Jew. So this idea of calling our Belizeans abroad in the diaspora, but somehow trying to find restrictions as to why they don't have the rights of Belizeans, completely turns over the concept of what diaspora really means. Diaspora means this is where my navel string buried, this is where I'm all about. This is what I believe in. I am a part of that.
The Belizeans living abroad have not been made to renounce their citizenship. They have not renounced Belizean citizenship.
No.
As a result, there are Belizeans wherever they may be. And it's incumbent upon us to ensure that they enjoy the full right of their Belizean nationality. Because they have maintained and preserved that identity wherever they are.
All right. My brother, Counselor, we have to pick this up another time because of constraints of time, but thank you for that input this morning. And one of those is sports. And that's a big, big subject that can be dealt with at the youth level, in schools, can be dealt with in terms of our international reputations, etc. But one of the main area of our sporting expression in Belize is cycling. And used to be a time when it was primarily just cross country. But this is a sport that has developed over the years, and especially recently, to become even more popular, more young people entering it. It's more than just once a year or twice a year. It's now something that is really moving progressively. And so as you move forward, you know, leadership comes under serious scrutiny. And as we were saying off the mic, the incumbents always are under pressure, because whatever has happened, it happened under your watch. Yesterday we had the, I'd say, aspiring president for the Cycling Federation was here. He was the vice president, that is Mr. Orson Butler. He was vice president in the previous administration, but now he is vying for presidency. And we had him on yesterday to discuss their slate. Today we're trying to be fair. We're bringing on the other side. And we want to hear exactly what they intend to bring to the table and what are some of the challenges that, and the criticisms that they have regarding the incumbent. So we have as our guest this morning, Mr. Alexi Ordonez. He is from the, he is vying for president of the Federation. And we also have Ms. Karen Vernon. She is vying for vice president of the Federation. Welcome to both of you.
Good morning.
And these people are no stranger, you know, we don't always see her in cyclists, but you know her face, because she is here almost every 2 months talking about something from out of niche. But she's here today to talk about why they want to become the leaders, really, the executive of the Cycling Federation. Let me start with you, Alexei. You were criticized as being too young That was what
Thank you.
came out of the mouth. That's
A compliment.
that's a compliment, indeed, indeed. We all strive for that, don't we? But in this case, it was sort of disparaging and suggesting that you're too young, you know, really ready, you know, for such an awesome responsibility as president of the federation. Can you respond to that?
Well, to respond to it, you know, I'm not young per se. If you notice, I'm getting bald. I'm 32 years of age, and I've been in cycling since I can remember myself.
Yes.
You know, my dad has been in the world of cycling for quite some time, even before I was born.
Yes.
And so I'm very, you know, knowledgeable when it comes to things.
So it's in your blood?
It's in my blood. It's in my blood. Not only that, you know, it's not just me. You know, I have a slate of 7, and it's not a sole effort to, you know, that I'm vying for. You know, I have a team of people, and behind that team I have a group of other people, you know, helping me out. So it's just not just a single man effort, as you can see what has been represented from the other side. Unfortunately, my 2 other state members, my secretary and my treasurer, had to left this morning due to timing with another meeting they had, right? Okay. So I apologize on behalf of them. In regards to being young as well, you know, most of the cyclists are pretty young cyclists. Indeed. You know, and I have a very good rapport with the young guys. You know, they come and talk to me all the time at the bike shop in regards to cycling and regards to personal stuff, you know. So my communication level with them is very good.
What are some of the, and you can jump in here also, Ms. Karen, what are some of the fundamental issues that cyclists have complained, particularly those that you feel you represent? What is the complaint regarding the way in which the Federation is presently and over the last few years being managed?
Well, for starters, there hasn't been any annual general meeting for the past 4 years. So that, you know, prove there's lack of communication. We don't know what's happening financially, any at all. The guys also are concerned about, you know, the amount of races they have on the calendar has been dropped to about 6 to 7, the most races, you know. Other than that, you know, there is no criteria for national team selections, right? No test races, nothing of that sort. These are some of, you know, few of the concerns they have in terms of marketing. You know, we haven't had any kind of coverage from any of the media outlets for quite some time. That's some of it. Ms. Karen probably can explain a little more.
Well, add to that, Ms. Karen, as you talk about what is not being done, talk about what you would do in regards to your criticism of what's not being done.
Well, what we want to bring to the table is dependability, accountability, transparency. Definitely training for youth and female cyclists. We want to develop a structure within the Cycling Federation. We want to develop a constitution which isn't in place. We want to develop a cycling community, not just for cyclists, but for people who are interested in cycling that can spread across a broader spectrum and increase the cycling community. You know, that's very important because it spreads to corporate sponsorship, it spreads to interest, it spreads to more fans for a certain cyclist. So, you know, the word gets out there. Word of mouth is always one of the best ways to get things out. And if we have that cycling community and, you know, it gets out there, it will be better for us.
Is there any aspect of this challenge personality based? You know, in Belize, a lot of our problems is I just don't like you. So is there motivation there of maybe personal issues between any of your people and the current executive?
Personal, no. You know, I have very good relationship with all the members of the federation. You know, I respect them all. So it's nothing personal on my behalf or any of my team members' behalf. But when it comes to cycling, you know, like I said, the poor management of what's going on, no constitution to govern, no kind of communication, no kind of development program set in place. You know, these are the things that you will take personal because when we go and represent outside, you know, we are always not prep. And my grandfather used to always say, if you fail to prepare, prepare to fail, right? And it's been like that for, like I said, the past 4 to 5 years under this current federation.
And there has to be some sort of accountability when it comes to the federation itself, like who oversees what happens within the federation, the National Sports Council, the National Olympic Committee. You know, there has to be some kind of inclusion with these other federations or committees to make this all work. You know, I don't think it can function on its own. So, you know, that would give it some accountability.
There's also been a concern, Ms. Karen, that there's a certain amount of, there's a personal element to this. I've heard the name Brandon Catus mentioned, that, you know, a lot of this really started to pick up dust after he was forbidden from riding, and that out of that kind of upset that a campaign started as a result. What's your opinion on that?
Well, the present CFB, there was the national, well, we know Brandon is on suspension. And the national road championships were coming up 2 weeks ago. And his case is in the hands of an international arbitrator. It's out of the hands of CFB, it's out of the hands of NADO. So this international arbitrator is gathering information from both parties, and information isn't forthcoming. There are deadlines that hasn't been met. So it's taking a long process. So Brandon filed an injunction at court so he could get to ride the national road championships, which was denied in court. But before that, the CFB decided to postpone the race, which didn't have to happen because UCI explained in their letter that if Brandon rode the race and won or placed, his records will be disqualified if he was found guilty, not the race itself and not any other riders riding the race. So the race could have gone on. I mean, you know, these cyclists were training. They were getting ready for this race. And, you know, you just don't get up one day and say, I want to ride this race. You have to train.
Yeah.
So having said that, I also want to say that as I said, it's in the hands of the international arbitrator. Nobody in Belize has any say in what's going to happen once all the documents that he wants has been provided to him. And I want to say that cyclists on a whole, or at least on a whole, if you're given a negative or a test, you have all right to contest that at any level that you want to go to. And the second thing is that if Brandon is found guilty, he has to serve his time. I'm his mother, but right is fair and right is right. So those are the two things that I want to put up there regarding that.
Yes. With no personal bias.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's very important.
Yeah.
I say that because the energy behind it, to a large extent, has come from Kaya. Kaya has been very public about her criticisms of what she thinks can be done and what is not being done.
And this is even before this took place. I mean, it has been ongoing.
I've been hearing Kaya's concern at least 2 years now. The issue, though, is that this incumbent group is really saying that we are doing the best we can. We're following the rules. We're not, as you listened to Mr. Orson yesterday, we're on top of things. We have had some slowness in the process, but we are basically, we can't quite understand what this group is really trying to do. How would you respond to that?
How can they be following the rules if we haven't had an AGM for the past 4 years? How can we be following the rules if we don't have a constitution that is governing the entire cycling body? You know, so I don't see, you know, following rules there, right? Lack of not following rules, I can say, you know, that these guys are just they're just doing, I wouldn't say the best that they can do, but they're doing
Very, very basic.
Basic stuff, right? That's about it, you know. I don't believe that, like you said, that you're doing the best. If you're doing the best, then we should have representation of the best, you know.
Has there been any accusation of financial impropriety?
Well, like we said, you know, in terms of an AGM, you're supposed to present a financial report every year, you know, giving light to what's happening in the federation, but nothing has been done since then, you know. If you ask any member of the federation, besides the guys on top, you know, nobody has an idea of what's been happening financially.
Ms. Karen, let's deal now with the future. If your slate is elected, what will you in fact bring to the table, and what will be different about the effort of your administration compared to the past?
Well, one of the first things that we want to do is build structure within the federation. We had agreed, the present federation and this team, that one of the things that we need to do is to put our constitution into place. That's not happening. So with the cycling body, I mean, this has to be done with the cycling body. We can't just decide what is going to be on the constitution. We have to meet and have several meetings and decide what's going to be on there, and have it legally filed. And this is the constitution that will govern the federation, and that will be our Bible. That will be what we will go by. That, you know, that isn't in place. So what is this present federation being governed by? It's just willy-nilly emotional type of. And definitely, we want to see some training for our youths and female cyclists. Of course, you know, we have elite cyclists who could benefit from training as well. And there are opportunities through UCI and the Olympic Committee to get training for our athletes. So, you know, we need to bring that to the table. We have to tap into that.
And you're thinking that there just has not been any effort to try to take advantage of these
No,
things?
there hasn't been anything.
I see. Do you have any objection to the fact that younger cyclists will now be allowed to vote? There was the criticism, and I brought it to Mr. Orson yesterday, that they are padding the lists with young riders. But he explained, I thought, effectively, that there are many young riders that are racing and winning as young as 13, 12 years old, he pointed yesterday. Should those young cyclists be allowed to vote?
Well, if you're taking part in cycling, then I would say yes. But if you're not, if you're not, you know, in cycling, then I would say no.
Are they asking persons who are not in cycling to be allowed to vote?
All right. To put it like this, we just received, I'm not sure what hour last night, we received a new updated registered member listing, right? So it
Which
has
we still
jumped
have
from,
to go through.
Yes, it has jumped from what was originally sent from 252 now to 263, and there are certain people on the list that, you know, would have a team with no cyclists. It's just support personnel, right? Which I don't really see making a whole lot of sense, you know. And the highlighted last name just suggests to you that this is some sort of padding the list, right?
Well, is there some rule? Is there some law? They speak about needing to have a constitution, but is there some rule that says how old you must be, or the fact that you must be an active cyclist before you can be on the...
Not to my knowledge.
So, in fact, they're not violating anything if those rules
Well,
are...
I don't know if I get
once they were registered before or at the EGM, because that was suggested at the ETM that was the cutoff time. So once you can prove that you were registered before that time,
Okay.
then
So these new persons now on the list would not be eligible?
we would need to check it, because maybe they had applied before and just weren't updated on the list, and I could understand that. But once you can prove that application was in at the time of the EGM, then
All right. In closing, let's talk about what will happen tomorrow, what time, where it will be, what's the circumstances that, and are non-cyclists allowed to come and observe the process?
To answer the first question, is I'm not sure if non-cyclists can come and are allowed, but the elections will be at UWI at 3 o'clock. We're having a bus from Kaya making a stop in Belmopan to pick up cyclists as well to come and, voice their
When you say
use their
we,
voice.
your group or the
Our slate,
your slate is
our
one.
slate has solicit funds to get people from out district to come and vote because we understand that like we said, like you mentioned, the padding of the list. We already know that they have personnels that are registered that basically are for them. So we really, really need the cyclists to come out and vote and let their voice be heard.
Yeah.
Right. Your last question was.
Well, that was my last question, but the question of being permitted to be there, well, I think you answered all of it, really, because
okay.
I wanted to know the timing and the reason why you are doing it the way you're doing it with bringing people in. Ms. Karen will give you the last final word. I don't want to be repeating a lot of what we've discussed in the past. I think that not only cyclists are waiting to see what will happen tomorrow, but I think generally, even those of us who are not cyclists, because unfortunately, many of these associations, whether we're looking at football, whether we're looking at cycling, basketball, is always seems to be this tug and war.
Yeah.
And many of us who are just fans, we just want to go out. We don't want to get into the wranglings,
Yeah,
but it's
exactly.
very important to look at these wranglings because they have a lot to do with where the sport is going in the next 10, 20 years. So we'll give you a last word on what not what you hope will happen. I know what you hope will happen, but you have a last word.
Okay, just before that, I'd like to mention the other two members of our slate is John Burns, who is vying for the title of treasurer, and Sean Duncan, who is vying for the title of the general secretary. And there are three executive members: Agassi Finnegan, she's our legal mind; Hao Cheng Lee, he's a cyclist that owns a junior team in Orange Walk. And the third person is Leticia Westby, and Leticia Westby has been in the cycling world. In fact, she was a member of the past federation, and she's been in the cycling world for years. She does development of the sport. So we have that's our team that we're putting forth tomorrow. But behind that team, we have a team of different people, advisors, people who do in charge of marketing, who have pledged their allegiance to assist if we should win. So with that, I'd like to urge all registered members to come out tomorrow, whether you're a cyclist, whether you're a team captain, manager, personnel, come on out tomorrow and vote. It's your right, and it's the one day that you will have a say in what happens in the future of cycling. So team upward bound, cycling leadership in the leagues.
Very important, and my own 2 cents would be, let us not just look at this group as spoilers that just have complaints and simply want to unseat the incumbent, but rather a group that has legitimate concerns about the future of cycling in Belize. So we thank Mr. Ordonis and thank you, Mr. Vernon. Do our closing remarks. We want to thank those who were with us this morning, Ms. S.K. Williams from out of California. We also had Ms. Karen Vernon, as well as Mr. Alexis Ordonis as our last. And we thank you for being with us today. We hope to be with you on Monday. Most High will be in the house, and we hope, God willing, to be with you next week, Thursday and Friday. Belizeans, stand strong and stand firm. For now, we got.
Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Another day is here. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. We gotta keep moving. Na 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 na. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Everybody gotta put their time in. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Voice our opinion and place your calling. WUB. Be yourself, see yourself. This is to show my people. Belize our hope, so to needless reason. Nobody feel left out. It's the vibe we dealing. Let's find a solution. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Love, respect, unselfishness and cooperation. That's how we need to build a strong nation. We are the people to make the changes. We are the changes. WUB. And all the things that we happen and I got blue skies. And nothing make people get victimized. That's why together.